The Duke's stepmother wants her banished, but he has other plans for her. She stood accused of theft before London's elite, diamonds glittering evidence of her ruin, while the Duke who'd once caught frogs with her as a child now had the power to save her or watch her fall. Welcome, my beloved. Before we dive into the whole story, please click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as beautiful as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. The drawing room at Silverton Estate pulsed with whispered accusations, each syllable a nail in Vera's coffin. She could feel 300 eyes burning into her back. Could taste the copper tang of fear on her tongue as the stolen necklace lay displayed on velvet before her like a serpent coiled to strike. "Thief!" someone hissed from the crowd. Vera's hands shook at her sides, but she kept her chin high. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble, even as her world splintered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The diamonds caught the candlelight, mocking her with their brilliance. The late Duchess's prize necklace, found tucked beneath her pillow by a maid who'd entered her chambers with suspicious timing. "I didn't take it," Vera said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I swear on everything holy, I didn't." "Of course you'd deny it." The current Duchess, Gladys Silverton, glided forward in her perpetual mourning black, though everyone knew she'd mourned her late husband for exactly one afternoon before beginning to redecorate his study. Her voice dripped with theatrical sorrow. "How tragic that we opened our home to you, poor thing, only to have our kindness repaid with betrayal." Vera's stomach twisted. She'd been at Silverton Estate for 3 months as companion to Lady Beatrice, the Duke's elderly aunt. 3 months of quiet contentment, of feeling almost safe again after her father's gambling debts had destroyed their family name. 3 months of carefully avoiding the Duke himself, the boy she'd once known, now a man whose gray eyes followed her through rooms with an intensity that made her heart stutter. "The magistrate has been summoned," Gladys continued, her performance worthy of Covent Garden. "Though I suppose banishment without reference would be more merciful than prison. At least you'd have your freedom, if not your reputation." Freedom. The word tasted bitter. Where would she go with no references, no family, no prospects? The workhouse loomed in her mind like a specter. "Stepmother." The Duke's voice cut through the murmurs, deep and commanding. "A word, privately." Duke Warren Silverton stood near the fireplace, his tall frame rigid with barely controlled emotion. At 32, he carried authority like a second skin, but Vera could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers curled into fists at his sides. Those hands had once helped her climb oak trees. Now they held her fate. "This hardly requires privacy," Gladys said, but something in Warren's expression made her pause. Now. It wasn't a request. The Duchess's mouth thinned, but she followed him into the adjoining study. The moment the door closed, the crowd erupted into fevered speculation. Vera stood frozen in the center of their judgment, a butterfly pinned to a board for dissection. She closed her eyes and remembered a different time. Sunshine filtering through leaves, a boy's laughter as they raced toward the pond, the absolute certainty that some friendships transcended class and circumstance. How naive she'd been. How foolish to think those summer days had meant anything beyond childhood fancy. When the study door opened again, Warren emerged alone. His expression was unreadable, a mask of ducal composure, but his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, found hers across the room with an intensity that stole her breath. "There will be no magistrate," he announced. Relief flooded through Vera's veins, so sudden and powerful her knees nearly buckled. "Miss Vera Ashworth," Warren continued, his voice formal, "will leave Silverton Estate tonight. However, she will not leave in disgrace." Hope flickered and died in the same heartbeat. Banishment, then. Just dressed in prettier words. But Warren wasn't finished. He crossed the room toward her, each step measured, deliberate, until he stood close enough that she could smell the sandalwood soap he favored, could see the slight tremor in his clenched jaw. "She will leave," he said quietly, "as my betrothed." The room exploded. The gasps ricocheted off the silk-papered walls like gunshots. Vera's vision swam, the room tilting dangerously as Warren's words echoed in her skull. Betrothed. The word felt foreign, impossible. A fantasy she'd buried 15 years ago beneath the rubble of her family's fall from grace. "You cannot be serious," Gladys sputtered, her composure fracturing like ice over a thawing pond. "Warren, this is madness. The girl is a—" "The girl," Warren interrupted, his tone glacial, "is the granddaughter of Sir Geoffrey Langston. Her bloodline is impeccable, her education exceptional, and her character beyond reproach. Any suggestion otherwise is an insult I will not tolerate." Vera's heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Warren was lying for her, and the cost of such a lie would be devastating. A duke didn't simply announce a betrothal on a whim. Society would demand proof, history, explanations. They would dissect every interaction, every glance, every moment she and Warren had shared since her arrival. And there had been moments. God help her, there had been moments. "When?" someone called from the crowd. Lady Harriet, Gladys's closest confidant. "When did this understanding occur?" Warren's hand found the small of Vera's back, steady and warm through the thin muslin of her gown. The touch sent electricity racing up her spine. "That is a private matter between Miss Ashworth and myself." "Private?" Gladys's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "You expect society to accept a secret engagement to your aunt's companion? A girl found with stolen jewels in her room?" "I expect," Warren said softly, dangerously, "society to congratulate me on securing a bride of grace, intelligence, and beauty. As for the necklace, I placed it there myself. It belonged to my mother. I intended to present it to Vera tomorrow. But circumstances have accelerated my timeline." The lie rolled off his tongue with such practiced ease that even Vera almost believed it. Almost. "Your Grace." Vera's voice emerged stronger than she'd hoped. She turned to face him, aware that everyone was watching, cataloging every micro-expression for future gossip. "Might I have a word? Alone?" Something flickered in Warren's eyes. Relief, perhaps, or fear. He nodded curtly. "Of course. We'll use the library." The crowd parted like the Red Sea as they crossed the room. Vera could feel Gladys's fury radiating like heat from a forge, could hear the whispers already beginning their corrosive work. By tomorrow, London would be drowning in speculation. By week's end, the scandal would be inescapable. The library door closed with a soft click, sealing them into blessed silence. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, their leather spines gleaming in the lamplight. Thousands of stories, thousands of worlds where this nightmare wasn't happening. "You didn't have to do that," Vera said, her voice barely above a whisper. Warren moved to the window, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the night sky. "What choice did I have? Let you hang for a crime you didn't commit?" "I could have left quietly. Disappeared." "To where?" He turned, and the anguish in his expression nearly undid her. "To what? A position as a governess if you're lucky? More likely the streets, or worse? Do you think I could live with that knowledge?" "You barely know me anymore, Warren." His Christian name felt strange on her tongue after 3 months of "Your Grace" and careful distance. "The girl you knew died the day her father put a pistol to his head rather than face his creditors." "Don't!" The word came out raw, wounded. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders with desperate intensity. "Don't say that. Don't pretend that girl is gone. I see her every time you laugh at Aunt Beatrice's terrible jokes. every time you lose yourself in a book, every time you think no one's watching and you look at the gardens with that expression, like you're remembering something beautiful. Tears burned behind Vera's eyes. This is insane. A betrothal requires, there are legalities, expectations. Your stepmother will demand proof. She'll investigate, and when she discovers the truth, then we make it true. The words hung between them, impossible and terrifying. You can't mean that, Vera breathed. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Warren's thumbs traced gentle circles on her shoulders, his touch simultaneously grounding and electrifying. Marry me, Vera. Not as a fiction to save your reputation, but in truth. Let me give you the life you should have had. Out of pity? The accusation tasted bitter. Out of love. The world stopped. Even the clock on the mantel seemed to pause its endless ticking. I fell in love with you when we were children, Warren continued, his voice thick with emotion. And I fell in love with you again the moment you walked into this house 3 months ago. Every day since has been torture. Watching you, wanting you, knowing the gulf between us made anything beyond friendship impossible. But circumstances have given us an opportunity, Vera. A scandalous, improper, absolutely perfect opportunity. Your stepmother is a conniving snake who planted those jewels to destroy you. I know it, even if I can't prove it yet. She wants me married to her insipid niece, and she'll stop at nothing to achieve it. But if we're betrothed, if we marry quickly, her schemes become irrelevant. Vera's mind raced. Marriage to Warren would mean safety, security, a position beyond Gladys's reach. It would also mean binding herself to a man who claimed to love her, a man she'd dreamed about in the dark corners of her heart, but never dared hope for. I can't let you sacrifice yourself for me, she said finally. Sacrifice? Warren's laugh was hoarse. Vera, you would be saving me. From a life of duty without joy, from a marriage of convenience to someone I'd grow to resent, from a future where I'd spend every day regretting that I let you slip away because I was too cowardly to fight for what I wanted. His forehead touched hers, their breath mingling in the small space between them. Please, he whispered, please say yes. Not for propriety or reputation or any of those suffocating reasons society would demand. Say yes because somewhere in that brilliant heart of yours you feel even a fraction of what I feel for you. The truth was, she felt more than a fraction. She felt everything, a hurricane of longing and fear and desperate, terrifying hope. Yes, Vera breathed. God help us both. Yes. The announcement appeared in the Morning Post exactly 3 days after the charity gala debacle, wedged between notices of a viscountess's death and an upcoming horse auction. The Duke of Silverton is pleased to announce his betrothal to Miss Vera Ashworth of Hertfordshire. The wedding will take place within the fortnight at St. James's Church, followed by a private breakfast. Within the fortnight. The phrase made Vera's stomach clench every time she read it. 12 days until she became a duchess. 12 days to prepare for a life she'd never imagined living. To a man she'd never imagined having. Warren had moved swiftly after her acceptance, with the ruthless efficiency of a general deploying troops. Within hours, Vera had been relocated from the servants' quarters to the blue guest suite on the family wing, a room 3 times the size of her previous accommodation, with windows overlooking the rose gardens and a 4-poster bed that could sleep 5. A lady's maid appeared the next morning, a quiet woman named Frances, who seemed utterly unfazed by the scandalous circumstances. His Grace has excellent taste, Frances murmured, pinning Vera's hair into an elaborate style that must have required architectural training. Though I suspect you'd look lovely in a flour sack, miss. Vera studied her reflection in the vanity mirror. The woman staring back looked like a stranger, polished, elegant, almost duchess-like. But her eyes betrayed her, windows to the churning anxiety beneath. The transformation had begun. Warren had summoned London's finest modiste, who'd descended upon Silverton Estate with her assistants like a fashionable army, measuring and pinning and tutting over Vera's meager wardrobe. Within 2 days, gowns began arriving, morning dresses in soft muslins, afternoon dresses in rich silks, evening gowns that shimmered like captured starlight. Each one fit perfectly, as if made for a body the modista had studied intimately. "How did she know my measurements so precisely?" Vera had asked Warren during one of their carefully chaperoned afternoon walks through the gardens. His smile had been enigmatic. "I may have commissioned a few pieces over the past weeks, just in case." Just in case of what? A scandalous betrothal announcement? Just in case I found the courage to tell you how I felt. Those moments, the quiet conversations, the accidental brush of fingers, the way Warren looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, made the madness almost bearable. But Gladys's presence cast a shadow over everything, her rage simmering just beneath a veneer of forced civility. The Duchess had retreated after Warren's announcement, but Vera knew better than to mistake silence for surrender. Predators were most dangerous when they waited. The proof came on a gray Tuesday morning, exactly 8 days before the wedding. Vera was in the morning room reviewing seating arrangements with the housekeeper when Gladys swept in like a storm front. "Leave us," she commanded. The housekeeper fled. Vera remained seated, spine straight, hands folded in her lap with deceptive calm. She'd learned early in life that showing fear was an invitation to cruelty. "You think you've won?" Gladys said without preamble, circling Vera's chair like a shark scenting blood. "You think because Warren has publicly claimed you, because society is preparing to celebrate your improbable rise, that you're safe?" "I think," Vera replied evenly, "that I'm marrying the man I love. Whether that constitutes winning depends entirely on one's perspective." "Love," Gladys spat the word like poison. "How convenient that this love materialized precisely when you needed rescue from theft charges." "The charges you manufactured." The accusation hung in the air, bold and dangerous. Gladys's eyes narrowed to slits. "Careful, girl. Accusations require proof, and you have none." "Neither did you," Vera pointed out. "Yet you were prepared to destroy me with nothing more than circumstantial evidence and strategic placement of stolen property." "That necklace belonged to Warren's mother, my predecessor. I was within my rights to investigate its disappearance. By planting it in my room, by bribing a maid to discover it at the most opportune moment?" Vera rose, meeting Gladys's gaze without flinching. "I may have been born into misfortune, Your Grace, but I wasn't born yesterday. I know exactly what you did, and I know why." For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across Gladys's face. Then her expression hardened into something ancient and implacable, the look of a woman who'd clawed her way to power and would die before relinquishing it. "You know nothing about what I've endured to secure my position," Gladys said softly, dangerously. "About the humiliations I've swallowed, the compromises I've made. I will not watch everything I've built crumble because a fortune-hunting companion spread her legs for—" "Finish that sentence," Warren's voice cut through the room like a blade, "and I will have you removed from this house within the hour." Both women turned. Warren stood in the doorway, his face carved from ice, fury radiating from every line of his body. Behind him, Aunt Beatrice hovered in her bath chair, her wrinkled face tight with disapproval. "Warren, I was merely—" Gladys began. "I heard what you were merely doing. I heard every vile word." Warren moved into the room, positioning himself between Vera and his stepmother with deliberate protectiveness. "You have precisely 2 options, Gladys. You can accept this marriage with grace and maintain your residence here as my father intended. Or you can continue your campaign against my betrothed, in which case I will execute the clause in father's will that permits me to revoke your allowance and housing should you bring scandal or disharmony to this family." Gladys went pale. You wouldn't dare test me. The words were soft, but they carried the weight of absolute certainty. Vera watched something shift in Gladys's expression, calculation replacing rage, survival instinct overriding pride. Very well, the Duchess said finally, her voice tight. I shall endeavor to adjust my perspective. See that you do. Warren's tone left no room for negotiation. And Gladys, if anything at all, happens to Miss Ashworth before or after our wedding, I will know exactly where to direct my investigation. Am I understood? Perfectly. Gladys swept from the room with as much dignity as she could muster, though her exit lacked its usual theatrical flair. The moment she disappeared, Warren's rigid posture collapsed slightly. Are you all right? He turned to Vera, hands reaching for hers with barely restrained urgency. I'm fine. She's all talk and venom, nothing more. She's dangerous. This from Aunt Beatrice, who wheeled her chair forward with surprising vigor for an octogenarian. Always has been. Your father was a fool to marry her, Warren, though I held my tongue out of respect for his judgment, or what passed for judgment in his later years. Aunt? Don't aunt me, boy. I'm not senile yet, despite what certain people would like everyone to believe. Beatrice's sharp eyes fixed on Vera. She's been stealing from me for months. You know, small things at first, a brooch here, a ring there, things an old woman might misplace. Then larger items. That necklace wasn't the first she'd taken. Vera's breath caught. You knew? Suspected. But suspicion without proof is merely paranoia, especially at my age. Beatrice's smile was grim. Gladys has been very careful, very clever. She needed money, you see. Her late husband, Warren's father, left her comfortable but not wealthy, not enough to support her schemes or her niece's ambitions. So she's been slowly liquidating my jewelry collection and pocketing the proceeds. Why didn't you say something? Warren demanded. Because I had no proof, and more importantly, because I was waiting to see what she'd do next. Patience, nephew, is a weapon the young underestimate. Beatrice reached out, grasping Vera's hand with surprising strength. When you arrived, dear girl, I saw an opportunity, not to entrap you, never that, but to observe how Gladys would react to a perceived threat. And react she did, exactly as I'd hoped, spectacularly, stupidly. Understanding dawned like cold sunrise. You wanted her to make a mistake. I wanted her to overplay her hand, yes, and she obliged beautifully. That performance at the gala, the theatrical discovery, the false tears, the perfectly timed accusations, it was masterful theater but terrible strategy. She revealed herself, you see, showed everyone exactly what she was willing to do to maintain control. Warren sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. You used Vera as bait. I used circumstances, Beatrice corrected. And before you spiral into guilt, nephew, remember that Vera is perfectly capable of defending herself. She proved that admirably just now. Most women would have crumbled under Gladys's assault. This one stood her ground and gave as good as she got. Vera's mind reeled. So the necklace, the theft accusation, you knew it was coming? I suspected something was imminent. Gladys has been increasingly desperate since you arrived, watching Warren watch you with that lovesick expression he thinks is subtle. She couldn't allow a genuine attachment to form, not when she'd spent years positioning her insipid niece as the perfect Duchess candidate. Christ, Warren muttered, this entire household is a viper's nest. Only the parts Gladys touches, Beatrice said cheerfully. The rest of us are quite pleasant. Now then, about this wedding. 8 days seems excessive. Why not tomorrow? Aunt, we can't possibly. Why not? You love the girl. She loves you, unless I'm completely misreading those longing glances. The special license is already obtained. I saw it on your desk. Don't look so shocked. What's the point of waiting? To give Gladys more time to scheme? Vera's heart hammered. Tomorrow seems rather sudden. Sudden? Beatrice's laugh was sharp. My dear, you've been in love with this boy since you were 8 years old. I remember your visits, remember the way you followed him around like a devoted puppy. Warren was equally besotted, moping for weeks after each summer ended. The only thing sudden about this is that it didn't happen 15 years ago. Heat flooded Vera's cheeks. Warren cleared his throat, his own face suspiciously flushed. Aunt Beatrice? Tomorrow, Beatrice declared with finality. I'll make the arrangements. We'll have a simple ceremony in the estate chapel, family only. Well, family and a few dozen of my closest friends. And the vicar, obviously. Can't marry without a vicar, that would be scandalous. She wheeled toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Warren? Tonight, you should probably post guards outside Vera's chambers, just in case Gladys decides desperation is more persuasive than acceptance. With that cheerful suggestion, she departed, leaving Vera and Warren alone in the sudden silence. Tomorrow, Vera whispered. Tomorrow, Warren echoed. If you'll have me. She turned to find him kneeling beside her chair, his expression raw with vulnerability and hope. I know this is mad, he said. I know it's too fast, too scandalous, too everything society says proper courtship should avoid. But Aunt Beatrice is right about one thing. I've wasted 15 years trying to forget you. I don't want to waste another day. Vera touched his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw, the slight stubble that shadowed his skin. Tomorrow, she agreed. But Warren, no more secrets, no more schemes. If we're doing this, truly doing this, I need honesty between us. No more secrets, he promised. It was a promise neither of them knew would be tested far sooner than they imagined. The chapel at Silverton Estate had been built in 1682, a jewel box of stained glass and carved oak that smelled perpetually of beeswax and old prayers. Vera stood in the small antechamber, watching dust motes dance in colored light, and wondered if she might actually vomit on her wedding dress. Breathe, dear, Frances murmured, adjusting the veil for the 100th time. The dress was ivory silk, simple compared to the elaborate gowns London society would have expected, but beautiful in its elegance. Warren had somehow procured it overnight. Another mystery to add to the growing collection of improbable events that had brought her to this moment. Through the closed door she could hear voices, more than the few dozen Aunt Beatrice had promised. Apparently, an octogenarian's definition of intimate differed significantly from realities. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Frances opened the door a crack, then wider when she saw who stood there. 5 minutes, miss, she said, then diplomatically disappeared. Aunt Beatrice wheeled into the antechamber. Resplendent in purple silk that would have looked absurd on anyone else, but somehow suited her perfectly. Her jewelry collection, what remained of it, glittered at her throat and wrists. Having second thoughts? The old woman asked without preamble. 7th or 8th thoughts, more accurately. Good. Only fools marry without doubt. It's what you do with the doubt that matters. Beatrice studied her with those sharp eyes that saw too much. Warren is terrified you'll change your mind. He's been pacing the vestry for the past hour, driving the vicar to distraction. Despite her anxiety, Vera smiled. He could still change his own mind. Not a chance. That boy has been yours since the moment you first met. Do you know what he did after your father died? After you disappeared from society? Vera shook her head. He searched for you. Quietly, discreetly, through channels his father knew nothing about. Spent a small fortune hiring investigators to track your whereabouts. When he finally found you, working as a governess in Lancashire, I believe, he was preparing to make contact when your employer dismissed you for being too educated or some such nonsense. The revelation struck like lightning. He knew where I was? For nearly 3 years. He knew, and he watched from a distance, and he hated himself for not having the courage to act. The obligations of his position, his father's expectations, the scandal it would cause, all those considerations paralyzed him. Until you showed up here, applying for the companion position. The position he'd arranged, by the way. Did you think it coincidence that Aunt Beatrice suddenly needed help precisely when you were desperate for employment? Vera's knees weakened. She gripped the back of a chair for support. He orchestrated everything. Well, everything except Gladys's schemes. Those were her own special brand of venom. Beatrice's expression softened. I'm telling you this not to manipulate you, child, but to ensure you understand what you're marrying into. Warren loves you with a devotion that borders on obsession. He will move mountains to protect you, to make you happy. But he's also a duke, with all the burdens and expectations that entails. His love won't shield you from society's judgment or Gladys's resentment or the 1,000 small cruelties that come with your new position. Then why tell me? Vera whispered. Why now? Because you deserve to enter this marriage with open eyes, and because I need you to promise me something. Beatrice leaned forward, her voice dropping to something almost vulnerable. Warren needs you to be strong, not just for yourself, but for him. The weight of this title, this estate, the responsibilities he inherited too young, they're crushing him slowly. He hides it well, but I see the cracks. You could be his salvation, Vera, or you could be one more burden he carries out of duty. The choice, ultimately, is yours. Before Vera could respond, the chapel bells began to ring, a cascading peal that signaled the ceremony's beginning. Frances reappeared, her face apologetic but insistent. It's time, miss. Time. What a strange concept. A month ago, time had stretched endlessly before her. Each day indistinguishable from the last, her future a gray expanse of genteel poverty and slow decline. Now time had compressed into this single crystallized moment, the breath before everything changed. Aunt Beatrice, Vera said as the old woman turned to leave, thank you for the truth. Thank Warren. He's the one who loved you enough to wait. The antechamber door opened, revealing the chapel's interior. Candles blazed from every surface, their light multiplied by gilt and polished wood. The pews held perhaps 50 people, far more than Beatrice's promised intimate gathering, but significantly fewer than a traditional ducal wedding would command. Vera recognized faces from the gala, local gentry, a few London society members who'd apparently made the journey overnight, and Gladys, seated in the front pew, her face a mask of rigid control. Beside her, a young woman Vera didn't recognize, presumably the niece, Lady Prudence, whose prospects had just been demolished. The girl looked more relieved than disappointed, Vera noted. Perhaps she'd been as unwilling a pawn in Gladys's schemes as everyone else. Then she saw Warren, standing at the altar in dark mourning dress, and every other observation evaporated. He looked terrified, hopeful, desperately in love. His gray eyes found hers across the distance, and something in his expression, raw vulnerability mixed with fierce determination, steadied her shaking hands. This was mad. This was impossible. This was everything she'd never dared dream. Frances pressed a bouquet into her hands, white roses and trailing ivy, simple and perfect. The organ swelled into the familiar strains of the wedding processional. Vera walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away, no family to witness her triumph or disaster. Just her, the daughter of a ruined gentleman, marrying a duke who claimed to have loved her since childhood. The congregation rose as she passed. She kept her eyes forward, focused on Warren, on the future racing toward her like a runaway carriage. With each step, the chapel seemed to shrink and expand simultaneously, intimate and vast, suffocating and freeing. When she reached the altar, Warren extended his hand. His fingers trembled slightly as they closed around hers. "You came," he whispered, low enough that only she could hear. "Did you doubt it?" "Every second since I woke this morning." The vicar cleared his throat, beginning the ancient words that would bind them. Vera barely heard them. She was too focused on Warren's face, on the way his thumb traced circles on her palm, on the realization that in a few moments she would be his wife, and he would be her husband, and nothing in the world would ever be the same. If any person can show just cause why they may not be joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. Vera's heart hammered. This was the moment in Gothic novels where villains revealed dark secrets, where forgotten wives appeared from attics, where everything collapsed into rubble. But no one spoke. Even Gladys remained silent, though her fury was palpable. "Warren Frederick Geoffrey Silverton, Duke of Silverton," the vicar continued, "wilt thou have this woman to be thy wedded wife, to live together after God's ordinance in the holy estate of matrimony? Wilt thou love her, comfort her, honor and keep her, in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, keep thee only unto her, so long as ye both shall live?" "I will." Warren's voice rang clear and certain through the chapel. The vicar turned to Vera. "Vera Catherine Ashworth, wilt thou have this man to be thy wedded husband, to live together after God's ordinance in the holy estate of matrimony? Wilt thou love him, comfort him, honor and keep him, in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, keep thee only unto him, so long as ye both shall live?" In that suspended moment, Vera saw her entire future balanced on a knife's edge. She could say no, could flee, could return to poverty and obscurity but keep her independence, her autonomy, her freedom from the suffocating expectations of the aristocracy. Or she could leap into the unknown with the boy who'd caught frogs with her in summer sunshine, who'd become a man willing to sacrifice his reputation to save hers. "I will." The words emerged stronger than she'd expected, carrying across the chapel with surprising force. Warren's relief was visible, his shoulders dropping, his eyes brightening, his grip on her hand tightening as if afraid she might still vanish. The rest of the ceremony blurred. Rings, a simple gold band for her, an identical one for him. Vows spoken and received, the vicar's blessing. And finally, the words she'd been simultaneously dreading and anticipating. "You may kiss your bride." Warren's hands cupped her face with exquisite gentleness. "Is this all right?" he murmured. Instead of answering, Vera rose on her toes and closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft, reverent, achingly tender, nothing like the passionate embraces described in forbidden novels. It lasted perhaps 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, Vera felt the world tilt and resettle into a new configuration, one where she was no longer Miss Ashworth, lady's companion, but Vera Silverton, Duchess of Silverton, wife to a man who'd waited 15 years to kiss her. The chapel erupted in applause. Warren pulled back, his forehead resting against hers, his smile brilliant and unguarded. "Hello, wife," he whispered. "Hello, husband." It should have felt strange, those words. Instead, they felt like coming home. The wedding breakfast passed in a haze of congratulations and champagne. Vera smiled until her face ached, accepted well wishes from people whose names she immediately forgot, and tried not to notice Gladys's venomous glare from across the ballroom. "She looks like she's plotting murder," Vera murmured to Warren during a brief respite between toasts. "Probably is. We should probably taste our food carefully for the next few months." "That's not funny." "Who said I was joking?" But his smile softened the words. "Don't worry. I've already instructed the kitchen staff to prepare all our meals separately. Paranoid, perhaps, but I'd rather be paranoid than poisoned." What a romantic thing to tell your bride on your wedding day. "I'm full of romance." Wait until you see what I've planned for our wedding night. Heat flooded Vera's cheeks. The wedding night. She'd been so focused on the ceremony itself that she'd barely considered what came after. Now, with Warren's eyes dark with promise and his hand warm at her waist, the reality crashed over her with startling intensity. "Warren?" "Your Grace." A portly gentleman Vera vaguely recognized interrupted, launching into an enthusiastic speech about land management. Warren's expression shifted to polite attention, but his hand never left Vera's waist, anchoring her through the interminable conversations that defined aristocratic celebrations. Hours later, when the last guest had finally departed and the servants had cleared away the remains of the breakfast, Warren led Vera up the grand staircase toward the ducal chambers. Her chambers now, technically, though the thought still felt foreign. "Nervous?" he asked softly. "Terrified," she admitted. "Me too." The confession surprised her. "You? The Duke of Silverton, who faced down your stepmother and scandalized half of London?" "That Duke," Warren said, pausing outside an ornate door, "is a performance, a mask I wear to survive society's expectations. Right now, I'm just Warren, a man who's about to spend his wedding night with the woman he loves and is absolutely petrified of disappointing her." The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache. "You won't disappoint me." "I hope not." He opened the door, revealing a suite of rooms that took Vera's breath away. The bedchamber was enormous, decorated in soft blues and creams, dominated by a four-poster bed that could sleep six comfortably. Candles flickered on every surface, their light warm and intimate. Frances appeared from an adjoining dressing room, her face carefully neutral. "Everything is prepared, Your Grace. Ring if you need anything." She curtsied and disappeared, leaving them alone in the candle-lit quiet. Vera stood frozen, suddenly aware of every inch of space between them, of the bed looming in her peripheral vision, of the fact that she was married to a duke and had no idea what happened next. "Vera," Warren's voice was gentle. "Look at me." She did. His gray eyes held nothing but tenderness and patience. "We don't have to. That is, if you're not ready, we can wait. We have the rest of our lives." "What if I'm never ready?" The question emerged small and frightened. "What if I can't? What if I'm not?" "Then we wait. And if waiting isn't enough, we find other ways to be together. There are no rules here, love. Just us, figuring out how to build a life together." The endearment, love, sent warmth cascading through her chest. "You really mean that?" "Every word." He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "I didn't marry you for duty or heirs or any of those practical considerations the ton would demand. I married you because the thought of spending my life with anyone else was unbearable. Everything else, everything, is secondary to your happiness." Vera studied his face, searching for deception or hidden expectation. She found only sincerity. "Kiss me again," she whispered, "like you did in the chapel. But longer this time." Warren's smile was soft and wondering. "As my Duchess commands." This kiss was different from their first, deeper, more exploratory, carrying promise of things to come. Vera's arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer, reveling in the solid warmth of him, the way he held her like she was precious and strong simultaneously. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Warren rested his forehead against hers. "Still terrified?" "Less so. But Warren, I think I'd like to take this slowly, if that's all right." "It's more than all right. It's perfect." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "How about we start with getting you out of that dress? It looks spectacularly uncomfortable." Vera laughed, the tension finally breaking. "It is, actually, though I have no idea how to remove it. Francis employed what I suspect was dark magic to fasten it this morning. Then we'll puzzle it out together. Consider it our first married challenge. As it turned out, removing a wedding dress required significantly more patience than either of them possessed. By the time Vera was finally free of the elaborate construction of silk and buttons, they were both laughing helplessly. The last of her anxiety dissolved in shared amusement. Later, curled together in the enormous bed with dawn painting the sky pink beyond the windows, Vera realized that Aunt Beatrice had been right. This was mad and improbable and fraught with complications they'd barely begun to address. It was also, she thought as Warren's breathing evened into sleep beside her, absolutely perfect. The scandal sheets arrived with breakfast 4 days after the wedding, delivered by a stone-faced butler who clearly wished himself anywhere else. Warren read the first few lines, his expression darkening with each word, then threw the paper across the morning room with enough force to scatter the carefully arranged flower centerpiece. "Warren?" Vera set down her tea, alarm trickling through her contentment. The past 4 days had been a cocoon of newlywed bliss, long conversations that stretched into dawn, stolen kisses in empty corridors, the gradual unfolding of intimacy that felt both thrilling and terrifying. She'd almost forgotten the world beyond Silverton Estate existed. Apparently, the world had not forgotten them. "The Morning Herald has decided our marriage is the scandal of the season," Warren said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "They're questioning the speed of our courtship, the circumstances of the announcement, my mental fitness for marrying my aunt's companion. Let me see. No." He moved to block her access to the discarded paper. "You don't need to read their poison. Warren, I'm your wife, not a China doll. If they're writing about us, I have a right to know what they're saying." His jaw worked, but after a moment he stepped aside. Vera retrieved the paper, smoothing out its crumpled pages, and began to read. The article was worse than she'd imagined. It didn't just question their marriage, it systematically dismantled Vera's character with surgical precision. The writer, who'd chosen the charming pseudonym Society's Conscience, implied everything short of outright prostitution, seduction, manipulation, deliberate entrapment of an innocent duke by a scheming fortune hunter. The speed with which Miss Ashworth, now the Duchess of Silverton, one shudders to write it, secured her elevated position suggests a calculated campaign worthy of the most mercenary adventuress. Vera read aloud, her voice admirably steady despite the nausea churning in her stomach. One wonders what hold she maintains over his grace, what secrets she possesses that would drive a man of his standing to such a precipitous and ill-advised union. "Stop." Warren tried to take the paper, but Vera held firm. "It is known that Miss Ashworth's father died in disgrace, his gambling debts legendary even among his profligate peers. That such tainted blood now mingles with one of England's most distinguished ducal lines is a tragedy of monumental proportions. One can only hope the Duke comes to his senses before the damage becomes irreparable. Though we suspect the scheming bride has already ensured her position through means we dare not name explicitly in these pages." The implication was clear enough without explicit naming. Vera set the paper down carefully, her hands shaking. "They think I trapped you with pregnancy. They think whatever generates the most outrage and sells the most papers. It's garbage, Vera, malicious, unfounded garbage." "Is it, though?" The question emerged bitter. "Unfounded, I mean. We married within days of the betrothal announcement. We had no public courtship, no gradual introduction to society. From the outside, it looks exactly like what they're suggesting. A desperate woman using desperate measures to secure a title. I don't care what it looks like from the outside." "Well, I do." The words burst out sharper than she'd intended. "I care that your name is being dragged through mud because of me. I care that people think you're either a fool or a victim. I care that Aunt Beatrice's friends are reading this over breakfast and pitying her for the disaster her nephew has brought into the family." Warren crossed to her, gripping her shoulders with gentle intensity. "Listen to me. Society has been judging me since the moment I inherited this title at 23. Every decision I make, every relationship I form, every bloody pair of boots I buy, it's all fodder for their entertainment. I learned years ago that trying to control the narrative is impossible. The only thing we can control is how we respond to it. And how do you suggest we respond to this? Vera gestured at the paper with its cruel insinuations. By living our lives. By being so spectacularly happy that their poison can't touch us. By proving, through time and consistency, that our marriage is built on love, not opportunism. That's very noble. It's also naive. Vera pulled away, moving to the window that overlooked the gardens. Gray clouds massed on the horizon, promising rain. You're a duke, Warren. You can weather scandal because your position is unassailable. But me? I'm the interloper, the upstart. Every mistake I make will be magnified, every flaw exposed and catalogued. And through it all, people will be waiting for you to realize your error and set me aside. I would never. I know. She turned to face him, her eyes burning with unshed tears. I know you believe that now. But what about in 5 years? 10? When the novelty of our romance has faded and you're left with a wife who doesn't understand ducal politics, who makes social missteps, who embarrasses you at state dinners because she doesn't know which fork to use for the fish course? The fish fork is the flat one on the outside, Warren said quietly. But more importantly, you're inventing scenarios to justify your fear. I don't need a wife who understands ducal politics. God knows I barely understand them myself half the time. I need you, as you are, imperfect and human and occasionally terrified, just like me. A knock interrupted them. The butler appeared, his expression apologetic. Your Grace, a letter has arrived. From London. Marked urgent. Warren took the sealed envelope, breaking the wax with his thumb. As he read, his face went carefully blank. The expression Vera was learning meant something was very wrong. What is it? We've been invited to Lady Harrington's ball, next week, in London. Vera's stomach dropped. Lady Harrington's balls were legendary, the pinnacle of London society, attended by everyone who mattered. An invitation was both an honor and a test. We don't have to go, Warren said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Yes, we do. If we hide here, we confirm everything they're saying about us, that I'm an embarrassment you're trying to conceal, that our marriage is something shameful. Vera, I'm right and you know it. We have to face society eventually. Better to do it on our terms, at an event where we can be seen together, where I can prove I'm not some scheming adventuress. Warren studied her for a long moment. You're sure? No. She wasn't sure of anything except that the walls were closing in, and retreat meant surrender. I'm sure. Then we'll go. But Vera, if at any point it becomes too much, if anyone says or does anything that makes you uncomfortable, we leave. No explanations, no apologies. We simply walk out. Agreed? Agreed. The week that followed passed in a blur of preparation. A second modiste arrived, this one from London, with prices that made Vera's eyes water, bringing gowns appropriate for a ducal debut. Frances drilled her on etiquette until Vera could recite the rules of precedence in her sleep. Aunt Beatrice provided brutally honest commentary on Vera's posture, her voice projection, her tendency to apologize for taking up space. You're a duchess now, the old woman said on the 5th day, watching Vera practice her entrance into an imaginary ballroom. Act like it. Shoulders back, chin up, eyes forward. Let them see you're not ashamed. I'm not ashamed, Vera protested. Good. Then stop walking like you're expecting someone to tell you you're in the wrong place. You belong everywhere Warren belongs. Remember that. The night before they were to leave for London, Vera found Warren in his study, staring at paperwork he clearly wasn't reading. She closed the door softly behind her. Having second thoughts about bringing your scandalous wife to Lady Harrington's ball? Warren looked up, his expression softening. I'm having second thoughts about subjecting you to a room full of people who will judge you unfairly before you speak a single word. Bit late for second thoughts. I've already packed 3 trunks of intimidatingly expensive gowns. We could still cancel, claim illness, hide here for the rest of our lives. Tempting. Vera crossed to him, settling into the chair across from his desk. But we both know that's not an option. This is my life now, Warren. Our life. Running from it won't make the scandal disappear. I just wish... He stopped, rubbing his face tiredly. I wish I could protect you from this. From all of it. The gossip, the cruelty, the way society will dissect every word you speak and every dress you wear. You can't protect me from reality, but you can stand beside me while I face it. That's all I need. Warren reached across the desk, taking her hand. Tomorrow, when we walk into that ballroom, everyone will be watching, waiting for us to fail, to prove their suspicions right. It's going to be overwhelming. Then we'll be overwhelming together. Vera squeezed his fingers. Besides, I have a secret weapon. What's that? I genuinely love you. All those other women chasing dukes and titles. They're performing. But when I look at you, when I take your arm, that's real. And people can sense authenticity, Warren, even when they don't want to. His smile was small but genuine. When did you become so wise? Somewhere between being accused of theft and marrying a duke within 72 hours. Trauma is very clarifying. Warren laughed, the sound chasing some of the tension from his shoulders. Come here. Vera rounded the desk, letting him pull her onto his lap. They sat in comfortable silence, her head resting against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. Whatever happens tomorrow, Warren murmured into her hair, remember that I chose you, not because I had to, not because society expected it, but because a life without you in it wasn't worth living. That's the only truth that matters. What if I trip walking into the ballroom? What if I say something idiotic to Lady Harrington? What if I use the wrong fork? Then we'll laugh about it later. And if anyone dares to criticize you within my hearing, I'll make them regret it. My ferocious Duke. Always. For you, always. They stayed like that until the candles burned low, drawing strength from each other against the storm they knew was coming. Because tomorrow, the performance would begin in earnest. Tomorrow, Vera would have to convince London society that she was worthy of the title she'd acquired through scandal and circumstance. Tomorrow, everything would change again. But tonight, in the quiet sanctuary of Warren's study with his arms around her and his promise in her ears, Vera let herself simply be. Not a duchess, not a scandal, not a problem to be solved, just a woman in love, holding on to hope with both hands. The London townhouse was smaller than Silverton Estate, but no less intimidating. 4 stories of pristine white stone in the heart of Mayfair, with iron railings polished to a mirror shine and windows that reflected the gray sky like disapproving eyes. Vera's hands were clammy inside her gloves as their carriage rolled to a stop before the entrance. Breathe, Warren murmured beside her. It's just a building. A building that's been in your family for 200 years and is currently staffed by servants who are wondering what disaster their duke has brought home. The servants adore you. Frances has been singing your praises in her letters to the housekeeper. Frances is biased. She's been paid to make my hair look respectable. Warren's laugh was soft. Your hair is always respectable. Beautiful, even. Stop inventing reasons to panic. But as they entered the townhouse, Vera's anxiety proved somewhat justified. The staff assembled in the entrance hall, 20 people in crisp uniforms, their expressions carefully neutral, but their eyes cataloging every detail of the new Duchess. The housekeeper, a formidable woman named Mrs. Hendricks, curtsied with precision that bordered on mechanical. Your Graces, welcome home, I trust the journey was pleasant? Long, Warren said easily. Mrs. Hendricks, may I properly introduce my wife, the Duchess of Silverton? The emphasis on wife sent a clear message. Vera was not a guest, not a visitor, but the mistress of this household. Mrs. Hendricks's expression softened fractionally. Your Grace, we're honored to have you. I've prepared the ducal suite according to His Grace's specifications. If there's anything that doesn't suit, please inform me immediately. Thank you, Vera managed, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm sure everything will be perfect. The dismissal was polite, but firm. As the staff dispersed to their duties, Warren guided Vera up the sweeping staircase to the second floor. The ducal suite was a sprawling collection of rooms decorated in rich burgundies and golds, opulent without being ostentatious, comfortable without being casual. Your mother's touch? Vera asked, running her fingers over the silk upholstery of a reading chair positioned near the window. My grandmother's, actually. Mother died when I was 7. Most of what I remember about her came from portraits and stories. Warren's voice carried old grief, carefully contained. She would have liked you, I think. She had no patience for artifice. Then she would have despised me at Lady Harrington's ball tonight. I'll be nothing but artifice. You'll be yourself, which is more authentic than most of society manages in a lifetime. Warren checked his pocket watch. We have 4 hours before we need to dress. What would you like to do? Rest? Explore the house? Flee to Scotland and assume new identities? Tempting? But I think I'll settle for a bath and a minor nervous breakdown. I'll arrange the bath. You'll have to manage the breakdown independently. I'm not qualified to supervise. Despite everything, Vera smiled. This was what she'd fallen in love with. Warren's ability to diffuse tension with gentle humor, to make the impossible feel merely difficult. The hours disappeared too quickly. Before she was ready, Frances appeared to begin the elaborate process of transformation. The gown selected for tonight was midnight blue silk, cut to emphasize Vera's figure without being scandalous, with sleeves that ended at the elbow and a neckline that hovered at the boundary between respectable and daring. You look like a duchess, Frances pronounced, stepping back to admire her work. Vera studied her reflection. The woman in the mirror was unfamiliar, polished, elegant, utterly unlike the frightened companion who'd been accused of theft less than 2 weeks ago. Her hair was swept into an elaborate arrangement that must have required engineering diagrams. The family's sapphires glittered at her throat and ears. Warren's mother's jewels, selected personally by him with what Vera suspected was deliberate symbolism. I look like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life. That's called imposter syndrome, Your Grace. Perfectly normal for someone who's risen 5 social classes in a fortnight. Frances's smile was kind. But between you and me, half the women at that ball tonight will be playing dress-up too. The difference is, you actually belong beside the Duke. They're just hoping to catch someone's eye long enough to secure a proposal. The observation was surprisingly comforting. Vera was still adjusting the sapphire necklace when Warren knocked, a courtesy, since these were technically his rooms as much as hers now. Come in. He entered, resplendent in formal evening wear that emphasized his broad shoulders and made his gray eyes seem almost luminous in the lamplight. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Christ, Warren breathed. Vera, you're... Terrified? Stunning. I was going to say stunning, but terrified works too. He crossed to her, his hands settling on her waist with familiar ease. We don't have to do this. Say the word and I'll send our regrets. And confirm everything they're saying about me? That I'm some inappropriate creature you're ashamed to display in public? I'm not ashamed of you. I'm protective of you. There's a difference. I know. Vera touched his face, memorizing the concern in his expression. But hiding won't help. We discussed this. We discussed it when it was abstract. Now it's real, and I'm discovering I'm significantly less brave than I pretended to be. Then we'll be cowards together, but we'll be cowards who show up. The carriage ride to Lady Harrington's Belgravia mansion took 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. Vera watched London's elite arriving in their finery, women dripping with jewels, men in pristine evening dress, all of them playing their parts in society's endless theater. "I need you to promise me something," Warren said suddenly as their carriage joined the queue. "What? If anyone at all, makes you uncomfortable, tells me immediately. You don't have to endure cruelty in silence just to prove a point." "Warren, I'm serious, Vera. These people can be vicious. They'll smile to your face while sharpening knives for your back. I need to know you'll tell me if it becomes too much." She wanted to promise, wanted to assure him she'd lean on him for support, but the truth was more complicated. "I'll try. But Warren, part of proving I belong here means handling challenges myself. I can't run to you every time someone makes a cutting remark." "Why not?" "Because then I'm the helpless wife who needs constant protection. I'm the problem you have to manage. That's not who I want to be." His expression shifted, frustration warring with understanding. "You're impossibly stubborn. You married me anyway. Best decision I ever made. Doesn't mean I won't worry." The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door, and suddenly there was no more time for doubts or promises. The performance had begun. Lady Harrington's ballroom was a cathedral of wealth. Crystal chandeliers dripping light like frozen waterfalls, walls covered in silk damask, flowers arranged with the kind of casual extravagance that cost more than most people earned in a year. 300 of London's most influential people filled the space, their conversation a symphony of gossip and observation. The moment Warren and Vera appeared at the top of the entrance stairs, the room fell silent. Every eye turned. Every conversation stopped. Vera felt the weight of their collective judgment like physical pressure, pushing against her chest, making it difficult to breathe. This was it, the moment where London society would decide if she was acceptable or merely tolerable, whether to embrace her or destroy her. "The Duke and Duchess of Silverton," the majordomo announced, his voice carrying across the sudden quiet. Warren's arm tightened fractionally beneath her hand. Together they descended the stairs, each step measured and deliberate. Vera kept her expression serene, channeling every lesson Aunt Beatrice had drilled into her over the past week. Chin up, shoulders back, eyes forward. "You belong here." The silence stretched. Then Lady Harrington herself, a formidable woman in her 60s with the kind of influence that could make or break social careers, stepped forward. "Your Graces." What an unexpected pleasure. The emphasis on unexpected was subtle but unmistakable. This was the test. How Vera responded in the next 30 seconds would set the tone for the entire evening. "Lady Harrington." Vera curtsied with precise depth, not too deep to seem obsequious, not too shallow to appear arrogant. "Thank you for including us in your guest list. Your home is exquisite." "How kind of you to notice." Lady Harrington's eyes swept over Vera with the efficiency of a general surveying troops. "I must confess, Your Grace, I was surprised by the Duke's choice of bride. So sudden, so unconventional." There it was, the opening salvo, carefully phrased to sound like polite curiosity while actually being a direct challenge. "Unconventional," Vera repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, I suppose it was. Then again, the Duke has never been particularly concerned with convention, have you, darling?" She turned to Warren, letting genuine affection color her expression. "I believe your exact words were, 'I've wasted 15 years trying to be what society expected. I'm done wasting time.'" It was a risk, admitting to a courtship that predated her employment, that suggested their marriage wasn't merely opportunistic, but it was also the truth, or a version of it, and Vera was gambling that authenticity would resonate more than practiced evasion. Lady Harrington's eyebrows rose fractionally. 15 years? How intriguing. I don't recall hearing about any previous attachment. We knew each other as children, Warren interjected smoothly, before social obligations and expectations created distance between us. Reuniting with Vera after so long apart reminded me what I'd been missing, someone who knows me as Warren, not merely as the Duke of Silverton. It was beautifully done, acknowledging their history while reframing it as romance rather than scandal. Vera felt a surge of gratitude for Warren's political instincts. Lady Harrington studied them both, her expression inscrutable. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. How refreshing. Most society marriages are exercises in strategic alliance. Genuine affection is rare enough to be noteworthy. She gestured toward the ballroom. Do enjoy the evening, Your Graces. I'm sure you'll find the company educational. The dismissal was clear. As they moved into the ballroom proper, Vera released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That went better than expected, Warren murmured. She didn't openly insult me, if that's what you mean, but she also didn't endorse me. We're in limbo, acceptable enough not to be ejected, not acceptable enough to be embraced. Give it time. Once people see we're not performing, that our marriage is genuine. Your Grace! A woman Vera didn't recognize descended upon them, her smile bright and predatory. How wonderful to see you! And this must be your new Duchess. How charming! The emphasis on charming made it an insult. Vera braced herself. Lady Pembroke, Warren said, his tone carefully neutral. May I introduce my wife, Vera, Duchess of Silverton? Vera, Lady Pembroke is an old friend of my stepmother's. Of course she was. Gladys's influence, reaching from Silverton Estate to poison London society. A pleasure, Vera said, though it was anything but. I'm sure it is. Lady Pembroke's eyes glittered with malice. You must be overwhelmed, dear. Rising from companion to Duchess in less than a fortnight. Like a fairy tale, really. Though I suppose all fairy tales require a bit of creative maneuvering. What would you do if someone questioned your marriage in public? Share your thoughts below. The accusation hung in the air, carefully phrased to sound like observation rather than attack. Warren's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Vera squeezed his arm. A silent plea for permission to handle this herself. Creative maneuvering, Vera repeated pleasantly. What an interesting phrase. I suppose you could describe falling in love that way, though I've always thought of it as rather more organic, unplanned, inconvenient even. But then, the heart rarely consults with propriety before making its decisions, does it? How poetic, Lady Pembroke said, her smile sharpening. Though I wonder if the heart was truly involved or merely practical considerations. Are you suggesting my wife married me for money? Warren's voice had gone dangerously soft. I'm not suggesting anything, Your Grace. Merely observing that your marriage has certainly improved Miss the Duchess's, circumstances considerably. It has, Vera agreed before Warren could explode. I went from living in fear of destitution to being married to a man I've loved since I was 8 years old. My circumstances have improved immeasurably. I won't apologize for that good fortune any more than you would apologize for inheriting wealth from your late husband. The shot landed. Lady Pembroke had married elderly Lord Pembroke when she was 19, nursed him for exactly 3 years until he conveniently died, and inherited his entire estate. The Tun chose to overlook her mercenary marriage because she'd had the good sense to be born into acceptable society. How dare? I dare, Vera said quietly, because I've already been accused of worse things than fortune hunting by people with far less subtlety than you, Lady Pembroke. If you'd like to continue this conversation, I'm happy to discuss the comparative morality of marrying for love after a childhood friendship versus marrying a man 50 years your senior for his money. But I suspect that discussion wouldn't end favorably for either of us. The crowd that had gradually gathered around them gasped. Warren's hand tightened on Vera's arm, not in restraint, but in support. Lady Pembroke's face flushed scarlet. "Your Grace, your wife is—" "Correct," Warren finished. "My wife is correct, and I'll thank you to remember that insulting her is insulting me. Good evening, Lady Pembroke." He steered Vera away before the woman could respond, moving them toward the relative safety of the terrace doors. Behind them, conversation exploded like fireworks. "That was either brilliant or disastrous," Warren said once they'd escaped into the cool evening air. "Possibly both. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize. That woman deserved every word." Warren turned to face her, his expression mixing pride with concern. "But Vera, you've just made an enemy of one of society's most influential gossips. By tomorrow, every drawing room in London will be discussing your exchange." "I know." Vera's hands shook as adrenaline drained from her system. "But I couldn't just stand there and let her imply she was saying what everyone's thinking, Warren, that I'm a fortune hunter, a schemer, that our marriage is somehow shameful." "Their opinions don't matter." "They do, though. They matter because your reputation is tied to mine now. Because any scandal I create reflects on you. Because—" Her voice broke. "Because I love you too much to be the source of your social destruction." Warren pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly despite the risk that someone might see them in such an intimate embrace. "Listen to me. You are not destroying anything. You're challenging a system that's built on hypocrisy and cruelty. Half those women in there married for titles or money or family alliance, but they're judging you for securing a good match through actual love? That's not just unfair. It's absurd. Society doesn't care about fairness. Then society can go to hell." He pulled back, his hands framing her face. "I meant what I said in there. Insulting you is insulting me, and I will not stand quietly while people question your integrity or our marriage. Not now, not ever. Even if defending me costs you friendships, alliances, political support? Especially then." His thumb traced her cheekbone tenderly. "Vera, my father spent his entire life cultivating the right friendships, saying the right things, playing society's games perfectly. And you know what he got for it? A loveless second marriage to a woman who's currently trying to destroy his son's happiness. He died miserable and alone, surrounded by people who valued his title more than his humanity. I refuse to follow that path." Tears pricked Vera's eyes. "You're too good for this world." "I'm just selfish enough to want the woman I love by my side, regardless of what the gossips say." Warren pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Now, shall we go back inside and face the wolves together? Or shall we make a scandalous early exit and confirm everyone's suspicions that we can't keep our hands off each other?" Despite everything, Vera laughed. "We should probably stay. Leaving now would look like retreat." "Retreat it is, then." "Warren?" "I'm joking. Mostly." He offered his arm. "Come on. Let's show them that the Duke and Duchess of Silverton don't crumble under pressure." They re-entered the ballroom to find it alive with whispered conversations that stopped the moment they appeared. But something had shifted. Instead of uniform judgment, Vera now saw division. Some faces openly hostile, yes, but others curious, even approving. Lady Harrington herself appeared from the crowd, her expression unreadable. "Your Grace, I wonder if you might spare me a moment. There's someone I'd like you to meet." It was a test, another one, always another one. But Vera was done retreating. "Of course, Lady Harrington, I'd be delighted." As Warren released her arm with obvious reluctance, Vera followed their hostess deeper into the glittering crowd toward whatever trial awaited next. Because this was her life now, an endless succession of tests and challenges, of proving herself worthy of a position she'd never sought, but was determined to fill with dignity. She only hoped she was strong enough to survive it. The person Lady Harrington wanted Vera to meet turned out to be the Dowager Countess of Ashbury, a woman so ancient she might have witnessed the Norman conquest firsthand, with eyes so sharp they could probably dissect lies at 50 paces. She sat enthroned in a gilt chair like a queen holding court, her gown expensive but decades out of fashion, her jewelry museum quality. "Your Grace," Lady Harrington said, "may I present the Dowager Countess? She specifically requested an introduction." The Dowager's gaze swept over Vera with the efficiency of a battlefield surgeon assessing wounds. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to the chair beside her with a walking stick that looked capable of inflicting serious damage. Vera sat. She had no idea if she was being honored or executed. "You're the girl who put Eugenia Pembroke in her place," the Dowager said without preamble. "Watched the whole thing. Brilliant. That woman's been trading on her dead husband's consequence for 30 years. Someone should have called her out decades ago." Relief and surprise warred in Vera's chest. Thank you, my lady, though I'm not sure brilliant is the word most people would use. Most people are idiots." The Dowager's assessment was matter of fact. "They value form over substance, reputation over character. You showed backbone tonight. Rare quality in a woman of your position." "My position being recently elevated and precarious? Your position being a duchess married to a duke who clearly adores you. That makes you more secure than most women in this room, whether they admit it or not." The Dowager leaned forward conspiratorially. "I knew your grandmother, you know, Harriet Langston. We came out the same season, 1783, back when society had actual standards. She married Geoffrey, and I thought she was mad. He had no money, less sense, and the personality of a wet blanket. But she loved him, and that love gave her 40 happy years before he died." Vera's breath caught. "You knew my grandmother?" "Quite well. We corresponded until her death. Sharp woman. Dreadful taste in sons, unfortunately. Your father was a wastrel, dear. I won't pretend otherwise." "But Harriet always said you had her fire, her refusal to be diminished by circumstance." The Dowager studied Vera intently. "Seems she was right. I'm not sure fire is a desirable quality in a duchess." "Then you're not thinking like a duchess should. Fire is exactly what this institution needs. Too many of these girls," she waved her walking stick at the room generally, "are decorative and docile. Pretty birds in gilded cages, singing whatever tune their husbands whistle. You might actually accomplish something interesting. Or I might simply embarrass the Duke and confirm everyone's suspicions that he made a terrible mistake. Possibly, but I doubt it." The Dowager's smile was sly. "I've been watching Silverton for years. Good boy, tragic family history. That father of his was a cold fish, more concerned with appearances than substance. The stepmother's worse, a social climber of the most transparent variety. But Warren, he's different. Inherited his mother's kindness and his grandfather's steel. Needs a wife who can match both qualities. You might just be that woman." Before Vera could respond, the Dowager raised her voice, addressing the small crowd that had gathered to eavesdrop. "Anyone who has a problem with the Duchess of Silverton can take it up with me. I'll be hosting a musical evening next week, and she'll be my guest of honor. If you wish to remain in my good graces, you'll attend and treat her with appropriate respect. Am I understood?" The pronouncement rippled through the crowd like lightning. An invitation from the Dowager Countess was worth its weight in platinum. She was one of the ton's most influential arbiters of taste and acceptability. Her endorsement could make or break social careers. "Lady Ashbury," Vera managed, "I don't know what to say. Say you'll come to my musical evening and bring that handsome husband of yours. I want to interrogate him about his position on the reform bill." Of course. We'd be honored." "Good. Now run along. Your Duke looks like he's contemplating murder in my direction. Probably thinks I'm terrorizing you." Vera stood, curtsied with genuine respect, and made her escape. Warren intercepted her halfway across the ballroom, his expression tense. What did she want? To invite us to a musical evening, and to inform society that anyone who insults me will answer to her. Warren's eyebrows shot up. The Dowager Countess is defending you? Apparently she knew my grandmother. They were friends. Your grandmother? Warren looked stunned. Vera, do you understand what this means? Lady Ashbury she's essentially untouchable. If she's endorsed you, half of society will fall in line just to avoid offending her. And the other half? We'll be even more determined to find fault. But we were always going to have enemies, love. At least now we have a powerful ally. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Some people were openly hostile, others cautiously friendly, most simply curious about the scandalous duchess who'd appeared from nowhere. Vera navigated it all with growing confidence, drawing on reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. But by midnight, exhaustion had replaced adrenaline. When Warren suggested leaving, Vera agreed with relief so profound she nearly wept. The carriage ride home was silent. Warren held her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm, while Vera stared out the window at London's dark streets. She'd survived. More than survived. She'd fought back, made allies, proven she wouldn't be easily dismissed. So why did she feel so hollow? Talk to me, Warren said quietly. I'm tired. You're more than tired. You're devastated. I can see it. Vera closed her eyes. Is this what my life will be now? Endless performances, constantly proving I'm worthy of existing in spaces I never asked to enter? Not forever. Eventually, you'll become established. The novelty will fade, and people will find new scandals to dissect. How long? A season? A year? 5 years of this careful navigation before I'm allowed to simply exist without justification? Warren pulled her close, tucking her head beneath his chin. I don't know. I wish I did. But Vera, you don't have to do this alone. Every appearance, every social battle, I'm beside you. We face it together. You shouldn't have to fight these battles. You're a duke. You should be above this kind of petty social warfare. I am a duke, Warren agreed, which means I have the power to protect what I love. And I love you. Far more than I love the approval of people who judge you for circumstances beyond your control. They arrived at the townhouse. Francis was waiting, but Warren dismissed her gently, insisting he could help Vera undress. In the privacy of their chambers, he unpinned her hair with careful attention, removed the sapphires with reverent fingers, unlaced the complicated gown with surprising efficiency. You're getting good at this, Vera observed. I'm motivated. Besides, I quite enjoy unwrapping you like a very elaborate present. Despite her exhaustion, Vera smiled. What did you think? Honestly, about tonight. Warren considered as he helped her into a dressing gown. I think you were magnificent. I think you faced down people who wanted you to fail and proved you belong exactly where you are. I think Lady Pembroke will think twice before insulting you again, and I think... He turned her to face him, his expression serious. I think we're going to survive this, Vera. All of it. Together. Promise? Promise. They fell into bed exhausted, curled together in the darkness. Vera should have felt victorious. She'd survived her first major society event, earned a powerful ally, proven she could hold her own among the aristocracy. Instead, she felt bruised and uncertain, questioning whether any title or position was worth this constant vigilance. But Warren's arms were solid around her, his breathing steady against her hair, and in that moment she decided that maybe, just maybe, it was worth it. Not for the title or the position or society's approval, but for this, for him, for the quiet moments between battles where they could simply be Warren and Vera, two people who'd loved each other since childhood and had somehow, against all odds, found their way back together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more tests, more scrutiny, more opportunities to fail spectacularly. But tonight, in the safety of their chambers with London sleeping beyond the windows, Vera allowed herself to hope that they might actually survive this with their love intact. It was a fragile hope, as delicate as spun glass. But it was hope, nonetheless. And sometimes, hope was enough. The scandal sheets the next morning were predictably vicious. "The Duchess's disgraceful display," screamed one headline. "Silverton's social climber shows her true colors," declared another. But buried among the criticism were a few surprisingly positive mentions, including a glowing account in the Ladies' Magazine praising Vera's refreshing authenticity and admirable refusal to bow to hypocritical judgment. "At least someone's on your side," Warren observed over breakfast, scanning the various publications with growing irritation. One publication out of 12. Hardly a rousing endorsement. Better than none. He set down the Morning Post with enough force to rattle the teacups. "Though I'm tempted to purchase all these rags just to shut them down." That would definitely not be an overreaction. "I'm a duke. I'm allowed occasional overreactions." Warren's smile was strained. "Besides, defending my wife's honor feels like an appropriate use of my obscene wealth." Before Vera could respond, the butler appeared, bearing a silver tray loaded with calling cards and invitations. "These arrived this morning, Your Graces." Warren rifled through them, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion. "This is unexpected." "What?" "We've received 24 invitations. To dinners, balls, musical evenings. Half of London's hostesses apparently want the scandalous Duchess of Silverton at their events." Vera took the pile, scanning the names. Some she recognized from last night, others were complete strangers. "Is this normal? After making a scene at Lady Harrington's ball? Absolutely not. Usually you'd be socially quarantined for at least a season." Warren's confusion deepened. "Unless... Vera, I think Lady Ashbury's endorsement carried more weight than we realized. These aren't just polite invitations. They're genuine. People want you there. Or they want to see what scandal I'll create next. I'm entertainment." "You're a curiosity," Warren corrected. "A duchess who stands up for herself? Who doesn't apologize for existing? That's rare enough to be interesting. And interesting sells invitations." "How reassuring." "I've become a circus attraction." Warren took her hands, his expression serious. "We don't have to accept any of these. We could return to Silverton Estate, live quietly, let London society chew on someone else for a while." The offer was tempting, but retreat now would confirm everything their critics believed. That Vera couldn't handle the pressure, that she was overwhelmed by her new position, that Warren had made a mistake. "No," she said firmly. "We stay. We accept some of these invitations. We prove last night wasn't a fluke." "Vera, I'm not backing down, Warren. Not now. Not when we're finally gaining ground." His smile was equal parts pride and concern. "You're going to give me gray hair before I'm 40. I'll love you anyway." The week that followed was exhausting. They attended Lady Ashbury's promised musical evening, a surprisingly intimate affair where the Dowager grilled Warren about politics, while Vera discussed literature with a collection of intellectual women she'd never have met otherwise. They appeared at 2 dinners, a garden party, and an afternoon salon hosted by Lady Harrington herself. At each event, Vera felt herself adapting, learning the unspoken rules that governed aristocratic interaction. She discovered that honesty, carefully deployed, was actually more effective than the elaborate social dancing most women practiced. When Lady Montfort asked pointedly about her sudden elevation, Vera responded simply, "The Duke and I loved each other as children. We were lucky enough to find each other again. I consider myself extraordinarily fortunate, though I understand it looks suspicious from outside. I'd probably question it too if our positions were reversed. The admission, acknowledging the scandal rather than denying it, seemed to disarm critics more effectively than any defense. Within days, Vera noticed a shift. Conversations flowed more naturally. Invitations became friendlier. A few women even sought her out for genuine connection rather than curiosity-driven gossip. "You're becoming respectable," Warren observed after a particularly successful afternoon tea. "It's almost disappointing. I quite enjoyed your scandalous reputation." "Scandalous is exhausting. I'll settle for boring and accepted." "You could never be boring." Warren pulled her into his study, his London study, significantly smaller than the one at Silverton Estate, but no less comfortable. "But Vera, we need to discuss something." His tone sent warning prickling down her spine. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. But I received a letter from my solicitor today. About Gladys." Vera's stomach clenched. "What about her?" "She's been removed from Silverton Estate, permanently." The words didn't quite make sense. "Removed? How? Why?" Warren gestured for her to sit, then pulled a leather folder from his desk drawer. "After the wedding, I had my solicitors investigate Gladys's financial dealings more thoroughly. What they found was extensive. She's been embezzling from the estate for years, not just taking jewelry from Aunt Beatrice, but falsifying household accounts, selling off estate assets and pocketing the proceeds, even forging my signature on several questionable transactions." Vera's hand flew to her mouth. "How much?" "Over £20,000. Warren's voice was tight with controlled fury. "That's not including the sentimental value of items she stole and sold, family heirlooms, artwork, jewelry that's been in the family for generations. She's been systematically looting my inheritance for her own profit." "What happens now?" "My solicitors gave her a choice: face prosecution for fraud and theft, or sign an agreement relinquishing all claims to the Silverton estate and income, leave England permanently, and never contact our family again." "What did she choose?" "She signed this morning. She's sailing for Italy next week with a small settlement, enough to live comfortably but not extravagantly. Her niece, Lady Prudence, will remain in England with a modest allowance, but Gladys herself is effectively exiled." Vera should have felt triumph. Victory. Gladys had tried to destroy her, and now she was paying the price. Instead, she felt something closer to sadness. She must have been desperate, to risk everything. "She was greedy," Warren corrected firmly, "and vindictive, and willing to destroy an innocent woman to maintain her position. I won't pretend she deserves sympathy just because she's facing consequences." "I'm not saying she deserves sympathy. But Warren, don't you wonder what drives people to such extremes? She climbed from merchant's daughter to duchess twice. That takes incredible determination. What must it have felt like to watch that position threatened?" Warren studied her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're remarkably generous towards someone who tried to have you imprisoned for theft." "I'm not being generous. I'm trying to understand. Because if I don't understand how she became what she became, I might become something similar. Power corrupts, Warren. Even good people can be twisted by it." "You're not capable of becoming Gladys." "How do you know?" The question emerged more vulnerable than she'd intended. "How do you know that in 10 years, 20 years, I won't be the one scheming to maintain my position? That I won't look at some new, younger woman and see a threat rather than a person?" Warren crossed to her, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye level. "Because you're asking these questions now. Because you're interrogating your own potential for cruelty rather than assuming you're above it. Gladys never questioned herself, never examined her actions through any lens except self-interest. That's the difference between you. I hope you're right." "I know I'm right." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Besides, I'll spend the rest of our lives making sure you never have reason to feel threatened or insecure. That's my job as your husband. Your job is to love me, not protect me from my own potential darkness. I can do both. A knock interrupted them. The butler appeared, his expression apologetic. Your Graces, forgive the interruption, but there's someone at the door insisting on seeing the Duchess, a Miss Prudence Hartwell. Vera and Warren exchanged glances. Prudence, Gladys's niece, the woman who was supposed to marry Warren before Vera disrupted those plans. Show her to the drawing room, Warren said. We'll be down momentarily. When they entered the drawing room 5 minutes later, they found a young woman who looked nothing like Vera had imagined. Prudence was perhaps 19, with plain features and nervous hands that twisted in her lap. She jumped to her feet when they entered, curtsying awkwardly. Your Graces, thank you for seeing me. I know I have no right to your time. Please, sit, Vera said gently, taking her own seat and gesturing for Prudence to do the same. What can we do for you? Prudence's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. I wanted to apologize. For my aunt. For everything she did to you, Your Grace. I know she tried to destroy you, and I knew. I knew what she was planning with the necklace, and I didn't stop her. I was too frightened of her to speak up, and that makes me complicit. I'm so sorry. The confession hung in the air, raw and honest. Warren's expression was carefully neutral, but Vera felt a surge of unexpected sympathy. How much did you know? She asked. Everything. I heard her talking to her maid about planting the necklace. I knew she was stealing from Lady Beatrice and blaming it on her failing memory. I knew... Prudence's voice broke. I knew she was planning to force His Grace into marrying me by creating circumstances where propriety demanded it. I hated all of it, but I was so afraid of ending up penniless that I went along with her schemes. Why are you telling us this now? Warren's tone was not unkind, but firm. Because she's gone, and I'm finally free to tell the truth. And because you deserve to know that not everyone in my family is a monster. Prudence met Vera's eyes directly. Your Grace, I don't expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm relieved you married His Grace. Truly relieved. The thought of being his wife out of obligation, of him being trapped in a marriage to someone he didn't love, it would have destroyed us both. Vera studied the young woman, searching for deception. She found only earnest regret. What will you do now? Your aunt is leaving, and I assume your situation is uncertain. I have a small allowance from my late father, enough to live modestly. I'm thinking of moving to the country, perhaps working as a governess or companion. Something honest. Prudence's laugh was bitter. Ironic, isn't it? The position you held is the one I'm aspiring to. It's not ironic, Vera said quietly. It's humbling, and honest work is nothing to be ashamed of. Warren cleared his throat. Miss Hartwell, I appreciate your candor, and while I can't speak for my wife, I believe genuine remorse deserves consideration. He glanced at Vera, a silent question in his eyes. Vera understood. This was her decision. Prudence had wronged her, but she'd also been a victim of Gladys's manipulation. The question was, did Vera want to punish her further or offer grace? Prudence, Vera said finally, I won't pretend what happened didn't hurt. It did. But I also understand being trapped by circumstances beyond your control, being so desperate for security that you compromise your principles. I've been there, recently actually. She smiled wryly. So I'm going to make you an offer. Come work for me. Not as a companion, I don't need one, but as an assistant. Help me navigate society, manage correspondence, organize charitable events. It pays modestly, but enough to live comfortably. And it comes with something more valuable, a chance to rebuild your reputation through honest work. Prudence's mouth fell open. You're You're offering me employment? After everything? I'm offering you an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you. Tears spilled down Prudence's cheeks. Your Grace, I don't deserve— Probably not, Vera agreed. But I've learned that deserving and needing are different things. You need a chance. I'm providing one. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I swear on everything I won't. After Prudence left, dazed and grateful, Warren turned to Vera with something like awe in his expression. That was either incredibly wise or incredibly foolish. Probably both. But Warren, we have power now. Genuine power. We can use it to crush people who've wronged us. Or we can use it to offer second chances. I'd rather be the kind of Duchess who builds people up, even when they don't quite deserve it. Warren pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. Have I mentioned recently that I'm completely in love with you? Not in the last few hours. An oversight I'll correct immediately. He pressed kisses along her jaw, her cheek, her lips. I love you. Your kindness, your strength, your ability to see potential in people others would dismiss. You're going to be an extraordinary Duchess. I'm going to be an exhausted Duchess if we keep accepting every social invitation that comes our way. Then we'll be exhausted together. Warren's smile was soft. Though I propose we spend the rest of today doing absolutely nothing related to society or scandal or social climbing. Just you, me, and perhaps some very inappropriate behavior in the privacy of our chambers. Your Grace, Vera said with mock horror. Are you suggesting we abandon our social obligations for carnal pleasure? I'm a duke. I'm allowed occasional abandon. That seems to be your excuse for everything. Because it works. He swept her up, literally lifted her off her feet, and carried her toward the stairs despite her laughing protests. Now hush. The Duke of Silverton is about to demonstrate exactly why his Duchess married him. Scandal, Vera gasped. I married you for your title and fortune, remember? The scandal sheet said so. Lies and defamation. You married me for my exceptional kissing skills. Among other things. I'll remind you of those other things shortly, in great detail, possibly multiple times. They disappeared into their chambers, leaving London society and its endless judgment behind. Because this, the laughter, the love, the absolute certainty that they'd found each other against impossible odds, this was what mattered. Everything else was just noise. 3 months later, Vera stood in the drawing room of Silverton Estate, watching autumn paint the gardens in shades of amber and rust. Behind her, preparations for the estate's annual harvest festival created controlled chaos. Servants rushing with decorations, musicians tuning instruments, Aunt Beatrice issuing commands from her bath chair with the authority of a general deploying troops. You look contemplative, Warren said, appearing at her shoulder with his usual silent grace. Having second thoughts about hosting 300 of our closest friends and neighbors? More like third or fourth thoughts. Possibly fifth. Vera leaned back against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. I keep thinking about where I was a year ago, sleeping in a room barely larger than a closet, afraid to dream about anything beyond survival, and now I'm hosting harvest festivals as if I've been doing it all my life. You have been doing it all your life, Warren corrected. Just not from this position. You're still you, Vera. The title didn't change who you are at your core. Didn't it, though? She turned to face him. 6 months ago, I would have been terrified of Gladys. Now I'm the one she's terrified of. 6 months ago, society's opinion would have devastated me. Now I barely flinch at the scandal sheets. That's not just growth, Warren. That's transformation. Is that a bad thing? Vera considered. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm becoming too comfortable with power, too willing to use it. You gave Prudence a job. You've established charitable schools in 3 villages. You spent last month lobbying parliament members to improve workhouse conditions. If that's you becoming corrupted by power, I shudder to think what you'd accomplish if you were actually trying to be ruthless. Those are different. Those are using power for good. Exactly. You're using power for good. That's not corruption, love. That's integrity. Before Vera could respond, Prudence appeared in the doorway, her arms full of correspondence. In 3 months, she'd transformed from nervous girl to competent assistant, managing Vera's schedule and correspondence with efficiency that even Francis praised. Your Grace, the final guest list for tonight. Also, Lady Ashbury has confirmed her attendance with 17 of her closest friends. Apparently, she's determined to see you triumph in your first major hosting role. 17? Vera groaned. Where will we put them all? I've already arranged additional seating in the Blue Salon, and Cook is preparing enough food to feed half of England, so we're well supplied. Prudence's smile was genuine now, without the fearful edge it had carried when she first arrived. Everything's under control, Your Grace. You can breathe. After Prudence departed, Warren pulled Vera close. She's right. Everything is under control. The estate is thriving. Society has accepted you, grudgingly in some cases, enthusiastically in others, and we're about to host what will probably be talked about as the social event of the season. No pressure. None whatsoever. His smile was wicked. Though I should mention that I've arranged a surprise for tonight. I hate surprises. You'll like this one. Trust me. The Harvest Festival began at twilight, as the estate's grounds transformed into something from a fairy tale. Lanterns hung from every tree, casting warm golden light across the gardens. Tables groaned under the weight of autumn harvest. Golden squashes, deep purple grapes, apples in every shade from palest green to deepest crimson. Musicians played from a raised platform while guests mingled in their finest autumn finery. Vera moved through the crowd with growing confidence, accepting congratulations on the estate's presentation, discussing agricultural innovations with local gentry, even managing a civil conversation with Lady Pembroke, who'd apparently decided that maintaining social relevance required making peace with the Duchess she'd once insulted. "You're in your element," Lady Ashbury observed, cornering Vera near the punch table. "I knew you would be. Born for this, whether you believe it or not. I was born for surviving. This is just adaptation." "Nonsense. Some people survive, some thrive. You're the latter." The Dowager's expression softened. "Your grandmother would be proud, you know. Harriet always said the Langston women were made of stern stuff. Looks like she was right." Emotion tightened Vera's throat. "Thank you, Lady Ashbury, for everything. The endorsement, the support, the friendship. Thank yourself. I merely pointed society in the right direction. You did the work of proving yourself worthy." The Dowager glanced toward where Warren was deep in conversation with several members of Parliament. "He's planning something, your Duke. I can always tell. Men get that particular expression when they're trying to be clever. He mentioned a surprise. Then I suggest you prepare yourself. In my experience, when dukes plan surprises for their wives, they're either extraordinarily romantic or spectacularly ill-advised. Sometimes both." As evening deepened into night, Warren finally found her, extending his hand with a smile that made her heart stutter. "Dance with me." "Warren, I'm the hostess. I can't just—" "You absolutely can. It's your party. You can do whatever you want." He pulled her toward the cleared space that served as a dance floor, where several couples already swayed to the musician's waltz. "Besides, I've waited 3 months to dance with you in public. I'm done waiting." They fell into the rhythm easily, Vera's hand on his shoulder, his at her waist, moving together with the unconscious synchronization of people who knew each other's bodies intimately. "This is your surprise?" Vera asked. "A dance? This is the beginning." Warren's smile was mysterious. "The actual surprise comes in approximately—" He glanced toward the musicians, who were finishing their current piece. 30 seconds. The waltz ended. The crowd applauded politely. Then the lead musician stepped forward, and Vera's breath caught as she recognized him. Thomas Linley, one of London's most celebrated composers, whose performances typically commanded audiences at Covent Garden. "Ladies and gentlemen," Linley announced, "His Grace the Duke of Silverton has commissioned a special piece for this evening, a composition in honor of his wife, the Duchess, titled Vera's Autumn." The first notes floated across the garden, delicate, haunting, beautiful in a way that made Vera's eyes burn with sudden tears. It was her, somehow, her story translated into music, the tentative beginning, the building complexity, the moment of crisis that resolved into something stronger, more certain. The melody spoke of survival and transformation, of fear conquered and love found. "Warren," she whispered, barely able to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. "You commissioned this? For me? I wanted you to hear yourself the way I hear you. Not as society sees you, not as that frightened companion accused of theft, but as you truly are, strong and beautiful and absolutely extraordinary." His arms tightened around her. "I wanted you to know that this isn't just acceptance, Vera. This is celebration. You didn't just survive entering my world, you've transformed it into something better." The music swelled, filling the gardens, and Vera realized the crowd had fallen silent, everyone listening to this gift Warren had given her. Not just the composition itself, but the public declaration it represented, his absolute, unshakable love for a woman society had once scorned. "I don't deserve you," she said, tears finally spilling over. "You deserve everything. The world, if I could give it to you. But since I can't manage that, I settled for a song." Warren's thumb brushed away her tears. "Though I'm hoping for a different reaction than crying. These are happy tears, you idiot." "Ah, those are acceptable then." The composition ended to thunderous applause. People surged forward, congratulating them, praising the music, celebrating the obvious love between the Duke and Duchess of Silverton. Vera accepted it all in a daze, still processing what Warren had done, the extravagant, public, utterly romantic gesture he'd made. Later, when the last guest had finally departed and the servants were clearing away the remains of the festival, Vera and Warren stood alone in the gardens, watching dawn paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. "This has been quite a year," Vera said softly. "It has. Scandal, intrigue, social warfare, and unexpected musical compositions. Don't forget the theft accusation and rushed wedding." "How could I?" Warren pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "Though I prefer to remember it as the year I married my best friend and convinced her she was extraordinary. You didn't convince me. You just made me feel safe enough to believe it myself. Then that's an even greater accomplishment." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the estate wake around them. Smoke began to rise from cottage chimneys as tenants started their day. Birds sang their dawn chorus. The world continued its eternal cycle, indifferent to the small miracle that had occurred over the past months, two people finding each other against impossible odds and building something real from scandal and circumstance. "Vera?" Warren's voice was soft. "Do you regret any of it? The chaos, the scrutiny, the endless social performances?" She considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain it caused you, the scandal, the gossip, the way people questioned your judgment." "That's not what I asked." "I know." Vera turned in his arms, meeting his gray eyes directly. "No, I don't regret it. Not the journey here, not the battles we fought, not even the suffering. Because all of it, every moment of terror and triumph, led to this, to us, to a life I never dared imagine but somehow got to live anyway." "Good." Warren's smile was brilliant as sunrise. Because I'm planning to spend the next 50 years making sure you never have cause to regret marrying me. Only 50? How disappointing. I was hoping for at least 60. Greedy. You married me anyway. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Around them, Silverton Estate continued its morning awakening, indifferent to the small miracle occurring in its gardens. Two people who'd loved each other as children, lost each other to circumstance, and somehow found their way back to a love that had survived scandal, society, and their own fears. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Challenges remained. They always would. Society would continue to judge, gossips would continue to speculate, and Vera would continue to wonder occasionally if she truly belonged in the world she'd stumbled into. But she had Warren. She had a purpose. She had the strength she'd discovered within herself when everything had seemed lost. And sometimes, that was more than enough. Sometimes, it was everything. The sun cleared the horizon, bathing Silverton Estate in golden light, and Vera Silverton, Duchess of Silverton, former companion, accused thief, scandalous bride and survivor, stepped into her future with the man she loved beside her. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and that made all the difference. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as beautiful and intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. See you on the next one.